Om, Om, Om. Om Ganganapate Namaha, Om Gangurabhyo Namaha, Om Aim Saraswatyai Namaha, Om Namo Bhagavate Shivanandai, Om Namo Bhagavate Vishnu Devanandai, Om Ganana Antva Ganapatigam Havamahe Kavim Kavinam Upamashravastam Cheshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspat Anashranvanu Tibisi Dasadanam, Om Shri Maha Ganapataye Namaha. Om Namah Shivaya. Welcome to our webinar tonight, which is Tuesday Satsang. We've been having these talks for quite a few Tuesdays now, and we hope to continue them. These satsangs began as a part of the teacher training course that is running now in Long Island, and so maybe in the future I will just keep doing something like this. If not weekly, we will do them as frequently as we can. So the title of this, the theme of this satsang series rather, is the empowering of our lives, right? So the empowerment of our life requires a lot of little skills, and it is slightly based on my book, Empower Your Life, and the rest is just very spontaneous. So I want to start our talk by concentrating on the times that we're living in now. Okay, if you try, please, for as best as you can, to avoid the media filling your mind with all the catastrophes that are going to come, and they're lined up one after another. I would say utilize this time, as you have already have been, to really create a new paradigm in your life, a new way of living. And I think because we all try to live a different life and a better life, we felt quite constrained by the fact that we're continuously moving. Let's say you want to eat better, but you're working long hours. It becomes very difficult to do it. Then if you want to be anything, you have to obviously work against obstacles, and that is okay. That's a part of spiritual life. But now, since we were made to kind of stay put, all of a sudden we can examine all the wonderful things in our life. And so my suggestion is to take this time as seriously as you can in order to create some profound changes for yourself and for others. And of course, to come closer to others. There is a beauty in discovering that the meal, that is shared between two people, three people, family like this, it can be quite a divine and a spiritual experience. And also perhaps if you go for a walk and just spending time with one another, will show you how little we know each other and how distant we have become on a level of our hearts. And of course, we have to make a special efforts and maybe meditate on how we're going to proceed when things kind of open up, in a sense of, is it possible to in some ways slow down in some ways and accelerate your spiritual life in other ways? So that also means to renew our connection with nature. And now our connection with nature cannot be just going for a walk and, naturally, connecting with the sun that rises, with the sky and everything, which remains to be practiced. But it is really to think how most of what we call a civilized world, most of what we call, our modern world, is really rather a deterioration and a movement away from nature. Therefore, the healing needs to come in. And if it wasn't for this, hadn't been for this coronavirus, nobody would have considered that as a possibility. And I think this is a wonderful possibility for all of us to think, okay, how can we participate in a larger life, in protecting nature, in doing more than we had done so far. So that is the intensity that I'm talking about, and the intensity, of course, in regards to your spiritual practice and everything. We have demonstrated to ourselves in these past 2 months that we can live simply, right? Of course, maybe we still, somehow live on our savings and things like that, but what we need to do is to initiate some different quality of life. and hopefully they will rub against other people who are at least to some degree are looking for a change. And let it be millions of teacher trainers, let it be millions of people who practice yoga or any tradition for that sake, in order to accelerate the movement of the humanity towards a new time, a new civilization. And the Swami Shivananda and many great masters do emphasize that there is such a thing as new civilization, new times, new era of humanity. And we can only start from the point of crisis. You see, there is something quite beautiful about crisis in general. One is that every crisis brings out um, almost the hidden powers of our soul, our minds also, and it forces us to drop all the things that we may call irrelevant or perhaps less important, or also to make some kind of an inquiry into what is the most pressing thing in our life, what is the most important thing in our lives. Maybe you've heard of this, but when people are about to die, you know, there was a book written about this by some nurse or somebody who said that the majority of people that she interviewed, they basically regretted for not giving more time to the very things, the very values that we live for today ourselves. You know, it's the spiritual life, it's the friendship, it's the nature. You could actually put it in maybe 10 words and you will find that all of us share the same longing in a way. Because otherwise, with all this technology and all these things, we're going to make use of it now, but with all of these things, you know, we find that, yes, we're connected, but we're separate, you know. We're united, but not really together. So there are a lot of things we can address. And the most important thing is that we must not let up our efforts when the things go back, because there's a tendency you can see among the people to slide back into the same life they lived. First of all, the life is never going to be quite the same. And the second thing is slipping back, meaning what? Causing more destruction, more different things like that. Since you're already very aware of everything that's going on in the world, um, I don't need to give you any details, but we definitely see that the nature has such a tremendous capacity for recovery and healing. All it needs is just to put humans away for a little while, and everything comes into balance. So this is like equivalent to, you know, when things are chaotic in our lives, the best thing to do is just become still, go into the silence, observe what's going on, make the right decision, like right actions from the silence itself. So this is my wish that we each, I try myself also, I think, okay, you know, I'm also here to learn something from this. Everybody is here to learn something. You cannot be on this planet Earth without a huge amount of notebooks and books to learn, meaning life itself. So with this, I begin our little story on in our satsang, which is what I would like to call it a new beginning. I really am a lover of new beginnings. The reason being is that I'll be honest with you, I failed so many times in my life on a day-to-day basis, year-to-year basis, life-to-life basis. And then I think, you know what? There's something quite wonderful about uh, having a new belief system, which is, you know, based on empowerment of your life, which is based on uh, the capacity to understand what a beginning is, right? And without um, going into any kind of, you know, complicated thinking here, we can think like this. Just imagine, like John Lennon would say, imagine that today is the day. Today is the only day, meaning today is a new day, but it is the only day. Suppose your life span was only one day. Just try to imagine it. In fact, from another perspective, as our life, as long as it may be, it appears to be as long as one day, maybe one moment, because, you know, the mind is the product of Maya, and as a result of it, it has a capacity to make infinity completely contract into a moment and vice versa. So this is necessary now for our meditations. I call these little ideas, whatever pops up in my mind and whatever pops up in your mind, equally creative. Put this down as something to think about. I call it a meditation, or rather call it a contemplation, which is the ability to follow a certain line of thought, almost kind of in a meditative sense, but it is really to build a larger picture and understanding of a particular concept or principle. So imagine today is the new day, and imagine that, not imagine, but think like this. Today is the day, now is the real time. This moment now, the present moment, is where our chance, our hope, our potential, our freedom, and salvation lies. You know, the Buddhists, the Zen people, the Vedanta people, everybody speaks about what we call the beginner's mind, the discovery of enlightenment in a single moment. Of course, this is not possible unless you live every moment in that particular way, but this is the way to do it. So each moment is each moment, meaning each present moment, is the potential. It is filled with infinite potential. So think of this hour, like right now, 707, good news hour. Think of it as a good hour, as the heavenly hour, because of our striving to achieve something more substantial than what majority of people ever will do. Think of this hour as the hour, and I would like to say not this hour exclusively, but think of any hour that you're able to. Think of it as the hour that you've been waiting for all your life. Now, why not try to master the art of changing the current of your thoughts, of your feelings like this? Why don't we learn to clothe our days with the best fabric of our thoughts and our actions that we possibly can and they're available to us at any given moment? This is not to say we will not have low days, low moments, and low that, but the idea is to concentrate on the positive. When Saint Teresa of Louis or someplace, I cannot remember that, was asked, okay, do you love the Lord, our Lord, with all your heart, with all your mind? She said, yes, I do. And says, but what about the devil? She said, I have no time for him. And this should be our answer. If your focus is on possibilities, then other things that come your way, difficulties, problems, they could be only a help, in fact, in attaining what you're already planning and what you're wanting to attain. You see, the glory of living in the now, in the present moment, can truly neither be explained nor intellectualized, because it has to be lived fully. So let's say sometimes we feel like, oh my God, the day was so difficult. Sometimes your struggles and your ultimate result of how you live through the day may arise only as a thought, I'm glad that this day is ended. It's possible, but it's okay. So was the day difficult? Perhaps yes, but remember the day has not ended yet. See, how long is the day? What way is the time ever defined, right? So think about it. Is it defined quantitatively or qualitatively? Naturally, for some practical purposes, we have divided this day into hours, minutes, and all that. But the time is really not defined by the numbers of hours or minutes or even seconds. It has none of the mathematics in it. In reality, the time is determined by the readiness of your heart and your soul to explore the possibilities, to find that little bliss in that space between two thoughts, which is really what the present moment is about. And it's to basically help us generate afterwards, of course, the quality, the higher quality of our intentions. So that is the important meditation. So you can put it down. If you like, take some notes. Please write down for yourself, okay, what does the time mean to me? How do I calculate time? How do I measure time? Do I feel that I'm young? Do I feel I'm old? Do I feel that I'm like this or like that? You may want to think like that. The truth is that we can turn our the current of our negative thoughts and moods in an instant. But it takes a lot of practice. And if you are ready to practice, then this will come all easier and easier and easier. One day you will be surprised how easy it is to actually switch the mind from being in one vibration to a higher vibration for most of the time. So think about the day. Each day is made up of millions of little present moments which are woven like a string, right? And these moments serve uh, as fresh seeds, you know, which we can sow. We can use them to sow, you know, important things to reap the sweet fruits of bliss and joy, wisdom and love. So these are the things that we can understand. So every moment is available for this kind of things. Or if we like, we could go the other way. We can feel upset, abandoned. We can feel cheated by life. We could say that there is no justice in the world. We can go by that belief system, which is not spiritual. It is actually cataclysmic and it's pessimistic, right? So the now, if you think of this as time in a way, is the time of innumerable possibilities. So I remind you, this is something that we have to think all the time. So what is spiritual life? What is sadhana? Yeah, this is a good question. Swami Shivananda says sadhana, means spiritual practice, is a systematically organized practice that is meant to take you to the highest goal, which is self-realization. But it is systematic. And the sadhana has to be appropriate for where you are. So we know that we're not all on the same level. We're not attracted to same practices. So we have to find what really resonates with us the most. But the reality is, spiritual life extends beyond just the time that you spend in your meditation, your asanas and other things. The reality is the spiritual life is a process, and it is the process in which we are related to the infinite. So it is simply the reflection of our deepest longing to know the knower, if I may say, or to know God. So this is what spiritual sadhana is. It's like an awakening of a distant memory of my completeness, of my oneness, of my freedom. It's got to be there. I call it a memory, right? But you could call it an instinct. May not be quite the most correct word. It could be. I like to say it's like Rumi says. It's a longing of the beloved to meet its beloved. So that's just what it is. So the spiritual life is nothing but reflection of that longing. It is the longing, in fact. So the spiritual life will take us to where it needs to go. Now, obviously, thinking about our lives, for most of us, sometimes we think, oh my God, I've spent so much time doing nothing. I was taking care of my hair, of course, not myself, but maybe, changing wigs here and there. Okay, I was doing my nails and I was spending my time in pubs and all these restaurants and traveling around. And, I was in Bali, Costa Rica, Vietnam. People go, okay, there's nothing wrong with it. That's the way you were expanding your own vision and your experience and all that. Nobody is asking to go back into it. Nobody is asking you to negate that. So the problem is this, that if people, if we simply exist but do not know the glory of being aware and awakened, even partially, if we're not awakened to the higher purpose like this, if we only seem to journey through this life or to journey through this time, then we do not live. Then we're like a little machines, we're little animals, something. We wake up, we look good, we're wonderful, we're young, then we marry, then we have children, off we go. It's not a great life. So in that case, we have forgotten the purpose of our life. You see, all the things that took place, the family formation, the children, all this, nothing of this stands in the way of realizing your true potential. But the point is, if at this point we simply continue to relive our yesterday and we try to, just simply live, like exist, not really even live, then this is not a good situation. You have to remember that the status of becoming and being a human being is the most difficult achievement to gain. Okay, no, the most difficult achievement. We don't want to waste the precious opportunity given to us. If you read the Shankaracharya's commentaries and books, he would say something like this. In Viveka Chudamani, he says, the most important thing in the most precious thing in the whole creation is to be born as a human. He says that. Then, of course, is to be open to spiritual things, then to have a spiritual teacher, and then, of course, to commit oneself to realizing God. I'm simplifying his statements. But the first thing is definitely being human and then discovering the spirituality. This is number 2. And number 3 is to have somebody can help you there, which you can do it directly, indirectly. There are not many teachers available anymore. So if whoever is there, find him, find her, and tune yourself to your to the practices, through the practices, to those masters, and they're always with us. So that is a third thing to do, is to have a teacher, and there's some more things. So this was also given by Shankaracharya in order for us to contemplate, right? So he says basically, do we really understand what it means to be a human being? And do we really understand the glory of being a human being? Now, because we do not know the higher dimensions of life, we do not know the existence of angels, other kind of beings, and there are millions of them. We do not understand what the animals go through. We do not understand also that there are realms of a very low vibration, which I'm not going to name them now, but we don't understand how beautiful it is to be human, right? You have, especially to be born in America at this point, maybe not at this point, but to be born in America is to really like be born to possibilities. That's why everybody wanted to come here. For me too, I wanted to give a satsang to people like yourselves. So I have to come all the way. I swam over the Atlantic and it was all good and a little difficult here and there. And I came here. I'm teasing it. I came to serve my guru, and I hope to continue that. And I hope that you feel the same, that your life and whatever you do in your life is a form of service. And it's not the numbers that matter. As I always say, you need not be Mother Teresa's in that respect, or you don't need to be like great masters who came for a specific purpose. Our service is not determined or defined by the numbers of people we meet, but it is by the profound existence that we can create in an instant, and by living in a certain way, if we can influence somebody, help somebody, that's all we know. If in a single day you are able to smile to somebody, offer an advice, cook them a meal, do something for somebody, write them something, that would have definitely fulfilled some kind of a divine prospect for yourself as a human being for that particular moment of the day. So I like to think of that, that higher beings are constrained by having to oblige and abide by the laws given by the highest intelligence. And for lower beings also, they're constrained by their, unfortunately, lower negative karma and other things which we know. This is especially with animals and all that. So knowing that, why are we so arrogant and so proud of everything? This is very difficult to understand, right? Because of course we lost our connection with the divine. We got entrapped in materialism, so we believe the material objects are the only reality. And when that happens as a big paradigm or thought formation, then when you want to lead a spiritual life, it looks as if you have to go through the hurdles of an infinite difficulties to become spiritual. Well, now we're going to reverse it. Okay, so we're all in these times to reverse this trend of thinking. Spiritual life is your foundation, and then let other material things come, whatever. But this is where we need to put our faith in first. So anyway, be happy that you're a human being. Very few people, very few beings are human beings. It is said that even angels are jealous of humans because we could initiate a new action. Everybody else has to do the things like a servant who serves his Lord. The same thing. Now, they're wonderful beings. Don't get me wrong. Everybody they're in this creation are magnificent beings we cannot even compare with. But the one thing we have a little bit, as much as we can make use of it, is the free will. And so this is where we have to concentrate on. And now, fortunately, if you're going to get trapped in your negative thoughts, in your past things, and all the things you did, and the grief, and all that, then you're not utilizing this principle of freedom or free will. So, anyway, the most unique feature of being a human is this ability to have an intelligent comprehension of what are we here for. That's what we want to know, and that we can realize God ultimately. So now we come to some practical aspects of this, right? As human beings, we know that we have some imperfections and we're striving for perfection. How to strike the balance between the two? This is very interesting. Striving means both, right? Sometimes you succeed and other times you fail. Now, I'm not saying initiate failure. That's a different story. You don't say, okay, let me go to a bar. I'm deciding to fail today. And then after that, I will, do some good work or meditate like this. Okay, if that's also a path for some people, let it be. But it always reminds me of the story of the guy who went into the bar, and each day he comes by himself, he orders 6 cans of beer, something like that. So after some time, the waiter asked him, why do you always order 6 beers, neither less nor more? And it seems kind of a lot for a single person. He says, I will tell you. I order 6, 2 for myself and 4 for my friends. So each one of them drinks 2, but they're not here, obviously. So we don't know if these friends like in invisible form or something like that. But anyway, he always orders 6, and that was what he said. So one day he orders 4. Now this is like really challenging. The waiter is running and says, what's happening now? And then basically the guy said, well, one of my friends decided not to drink any longer. So this is kind of sometimes the way that we kind of move through the spiritual kind of intentions. Sometimes we make a step forward and then we go back 3, then we make a step forward. And I'm not saying, okay, obviously somewhat consciously we make mistakes, but at the same time, we try to understand that the striving is what matters the most. If you can underline, that's another meditation. Because initially, there's an imbalance between obviously succeeding and failing, or rather say proper striving. we seem to be failing more than actually succeeding. So here, I have to say that the failure is a part of your success. Nobody has succeeded all in once, and maybe if the people have done it, it is because they've done a lot of good work in previous incarnations and a lot of good work in this incarnation. So the fact is that your struggles indicate that the fight is intense, and that's all that matters. So never worry about the failures. That's what Swami Shivananda always tells us, as long as you make an effort to rise each time after you failed. And hopefully moving more, being a little more smart in life, trying to not deliberately make mistakes, then we feel, okay, well, the struggle feels really good, so I can do. There will be um, a time when you will feel repugnance towards making the same mistake. That is a good sign. When you're saying, oh my God, I didn't really want to go through this anymore. But for now, do what you can. So failures, if not sought, they glorify the success. So Swami Shivananda always used to say, um, glorify the struggle. So evolution, of course, of human beings clearly depends on the existence of the opposites. In order to draw the light, you need darkness. You cannot ever explain why there is a contrast, yin and yang, darkness and light, and this and that. So this is what it is. The evolution clearly depends on the tension that is created between the two, so that you can propel yourself into the realm of light, but also using your little darknesses, whatever they are there. So the progress depends on that contrast, on that struggle. Now, the first and next and the most important thing, which was part of what we discussed before, since we had a break 2 weeks, so I'm not exactly continuing where we stopped. What we need to do is to gradually develop a capacity to be vigilant, okay, meaning aware. So constant vigilance is necessary. If you ask people what they're thinking, they will often reply that they do not know. It's like, people are not in their bodies, they're not in their minds, they're somewhere else. And this is kind of what it is. You ask them, where are you? What are you thinking about? They don't know. Because they never learned how to observe themselves, their mind. And so the important thing here is they did not learn to recognize what kind of a presence they feel in themselves. Okay, or like this, they have no idea of the currents of thoughts and other things. They literally pass through them. And then I would say that they're not aware of any kind of unfinished thoughts, unfinished sensory perceptions, inputs, and like this. So often when you look at the mind of a person, when you think of a mind of a person, what happens, there's a chaos going on. They're receiving an impression here, they're doing, not everybody, and not, of course, all the time. But the point is that usually people are not aware of what they're thinking about. So there is a wonderful passage in the Bible, which I'm going to share with you. It says here, the Bible tells us to be moderate and vigilant. And it goes like this: because your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. See, the lion is walking around, the devil in the form of a lion. Okay, not a really physical lion, but the devil here is the Maya. The Maya generally manifests as a temptation for all of your unfulfilled desires, right? All of your little cravings and lusts and different things. That's what the Maya is waiting for us the most. So because of your adversary, the devil walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. So what does this mean? The depths of our minds, There are all kinds of desires, all kinds of little anger, hatred, jealousies, lusts, and negative beliefs that they're ready to pounce on us, and they're ready to destroy us. So that is why this teaching Jesus gave us, right? Because if you're not vigilant, you fall victim to them. And people do. We know that. And we all do. We all have done it. So what is the most important thing for any one of us, for a disciple? This, people don't teach this in teacher training courses. Everybody teaches karma, chakras, 3 bodies, 5 of these, 4 of those. It's like a Christmas carol. Everything is wonderful, everything is numbered, and I know this is definitely important. But I don't really recall any deep like teaching or thought about the power of thought and what we need to do in our life. I don't know if you're obviously aware of it, but for myself, yeah, I've been very rarely um, a witness to something like that. Majority of people never discuss how to work with emotions, how to work with your feelings, how to work with your thoughts, what the process is. It's kind of given here and there in between. But I take it that this is actually the ABC of your spiritual life. Like if you really want to know the ABC of spiritual life, then you have to go down to the level of thoughts and how you manage your mind throughout the day. The other things that the thought and teacher training course should kind of support and create a wonderful foundation for one to work with. So the most important thing for any one of us is that we must keep an eye on what goes on within us. We must be aware of every phenomenon that takes place in a kind of detached way, at the same time alert. And we must be able to become constantly watchful of what's going on and be able to discern at each instant the true nature of what manifests within us, meaning the true nature of the currents, all the desires or thoughts, influencing impulses to which we are subject. That doesn't mean that we have to beat ourselves on the head or suppress them all. Like that's none of that. It is simply knowing it. Once you know something like this, then you also know what you need to do. See, that's called the cultivation of total awareness. People call it now the mindfulness. They have different words. It is often attractive, especially to people who are not bhaktas or devotees. So they like this. However, there has to be an element of bhakti to succeed in this too, which we're not going to discuss today. So only by cultivating this total awareness and by continuing to nourish also that relationship with the beloved, with your God, or with some higher ideal, you can be relatively safe in the spiritual life. I would say relatively because there's always something that can come from around, from about. But if you're aware, if you're able to stay in that awareness, then you're protected. And staying in awareness is the hardest thing to do, right? Because sometimes all these little things that even may work against us are very attractive. So creative power of Swami Shivananda says, now we can just conclude a little bit with just some emphasis on what we need to do. Everyone has a creative power, which is expressed through our thinking, right? So the creative power is the privilege of every mind. And Swami Shivananda says that our own efforts are guided by our aspiration. And all these efforts that we make become our destiny, or the warp and woof of our destiny. So he emphasizes a lot, Swami Shivanandaji says, do not possess a dissipated mind by cherishing weak thoughts, right? So this is important. There's on one side dissipation and there are weak thoughts. So we need to think deeply. We need to think strongly. So superficial mind cannot acquire the depth of insight. So what do we do there? We learn to basically concentrate also. So control the moving mind, Swami Shivananda says, by entertaining one focus or one flow of thoughts. And that's what we need to do. As Buddha would say, when you walk, you walk. When you talk, but do not wobble. Yeah. So no more multitasking, my people. This is the end of multitasking, you know. Driving and texting is not allowed here, you know, because there's two problems. One is multitasking. But why are we multitasking? Because we have too many things on our plate. So this problem is the result of a first problem. The problem of multitasking is the result of the fact that we just have too many desires and we are spread out on too many little projects and things like this. Too many books we want to read, too many friends we want to, you know, be with and all that. I'm not against all of that, you know, in principle, but you need to have a single focus in life, and this is a hard one to do because we're always afraid that we're going to miss on something if we dedicate ourselves to fewer things. I think the fear of just being like nailed to one thing is a very, very large fear in majority of people. So anyway, this is what we need to remember. You know, try to keep some focus, and the way to do this is simply to know a few principles about concentration. Okay, one is declutter your mind of all these ideas that are not directly related to spiritual evolution, if possible, or minimize them. See, our society discourages a sustained focus. In some ways, it encourages it when you have to achieve something. But due to the fast technological development, many people have lost the attention span. And I will remind you of that when you go to, you know, let's say if you want to watch an old movie, right? Gone with the Wind or something like that. Something maybe more attractive. I can't really remember any movies. I never watched one for a long time. But let's say you watch an old movie and you're quite taken aback by the slowness of it, right? There seems to be like gaps in between. He says, "Oh, I love you," or she says, "I love you," or whatever. Whoever says, "I love you," there seem to be uh, there's a gap of 5 minutes of loving something, and you think, "Oh my God, people, let's move on." So what do people do nowadays when they watch a slow movie? They check the email quickly because, you know, if you ever watch Mahabharata on the TV, there are 18 DVDs, 3 hours long each. Like it's a beautiful everything, but the movie was done at such a slow pace that you can easily fall asleep if you don't keep, you know, some little, you know, pics or something in between your eyebrows. It's so amazing, you know, the look in his eyes, her eyes, somebody else's eyes. It's like the camera kind of is totally fixed on that for maybe a minute, and you think, oh my God, okay, we got to get going somewhere, so let's do it. So because of this attention span, we have all kinds of problems, right? We know the children, memory problems, inability to concentrate. People don't memorize anything. Everything's Google, Google, Google. I will get there when this is my problem teaching Sanskrit also. Nobody wants to memorize anything. Everybody wants to know the structure of the language. They want to know how it works and where to look for if they want to find a particular form. But that doesn't work that way, as we know. Similarly, in your own professions, you cannot always go to the book. You have to remember, you know, for most of the time what you've learned and somehow processed and digested. So all these things we can remove by first declutter your house physically, declutter your relationships psychically if you want to do that. So get rid of all things that are dysfunctional in your life. Be courageous to do that, and then see if you can, you know, live on few principles here, and that is how to create some continuity of attention in your life so that you can have a better quality of your life, because the better quality of life literally means a good focus. You know, it means to put your concentration and your love in the very thing that you're doing. And that concentration practice should pervade every aspect of our lives, which we, of course, don't do anymore, but we can do that. So regarding the concentration, monitor things such as the degree of your concentration or your attention, duration, a formal range or fluctuations that come with that, anything like that will do. And any conflicts that arise in the process of your concentrating. So what is it that really takes your mind away from it? Remember, the mind can do only one thing at a time, and if you learn to do that, it will be a perfect thing. Now, I'm not saying that sometimes we do not, we have to multitask, but it should not be a way of life. So this is what we need to slowly practice. Now, to finish up, I think I started a little later, so I'm adding a little bit a few things. So one has to protect oneself from two problems here. Again, one would be a dissipation of our mind. And the second thing is, which is sometimes caused by the first thing, is the maintaining of negative thoughts and negative thought processes. So what I'm inviting you to do is to try to um, do an organizational work of your mental factory. Imagine you're inside of a mental factory and you're seeing things thrown out in all different kind of corners, and the boxes are here and the things are there. So we're trying to organize as well as integrate the mental activities and processes, and that can only be done by asking, what I'm thinking now, is it necessary to do this now? Let's say I'm going on a web, or I'm going to send an email, right? This is a typical problem. So all my little browsers are open, which are my typical things where I go. One is Facebook, one is this. So the Facebook has maybe 2 or 3, red things are saying somebody said something, whatever. So obviously I say, okay, I go there. Then, something else. So instead of sending an email, I spent 15 minutes wandering around, literally cruising the web, and then coming home and saying, okay, I'm doing the email. So I think I'm just being caught up with everything, whereas in reality, I'm caught up in the maya of this technology. If you do one thing at a time, then you ignore all these Facebook things and everything. Of course, never ignore my messages there, but anything else, it's okay. So teasing you. So what happens is that you have to group your activities like this. So even if you want to do certain things, let it be grouped, timed. So everything should have a time for itself. Not so easy to do this. So anyway, to finish, I want to just remind you to do some meditations like this. Maybe pick 1 or 2 ideas, or as many as you like. You have a whole week to think about. If you want to work as a little team like this, it will inspire me if anything inspires you, so that I could see what we can do, what we can talk about each time. But the idea is that the most important idea is to think about how we're going to live. If everything goes well and things will come back to some activity, will they really come to the same level of activity? My of course concern would be if we always to rush into, how many flights there every day in America? You might Google that. Don't remember it, but there's something between I think 70 to 100,000 flights taking place every single day in America alone. That is a lot of flights. This is a lot of restless people moving from one place to another. And not just that, how much of a sky do we have left, that can heal from all these things like this? So even a small thinking like this, maybe flying less, maybe get your old donkey out of the garage and say, okay, donkey, here are the 3 carrots. Let's go and visit Prem Sadasivananda in Manhattan. It will take a little longer than an hour, but we will get there. So when you come here, we will feed the donkey. We'll give him a few carrots. You stay here. We have some meals together. You see, I don't say we need to return back into the old age. We will never do that, like into a stone age. But what we are doing is to bringing the spiritual quality. And if you always try to put your spirituality first, your mind will be definitely better, in a better shape, and you would not be so much controlled by the material life. If you don't do sadhana, the material life is the only option for that mind, meaning the contrast, the conflicts, all these things that we have. So I salute you here. I hope you enjoyed this little talky talk, and we'll finish with a little prayer. Om, om, om. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamadachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti 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 Om Peace 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 Bol Sadguru Shivan Maharaj Ki Jai Bol Shri Vishnu Devanand Maharaj Ki Jai Hari Om Tat Sat Om